Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a very special edition of the show with a very special guest. We have founding member and keyboard player of Alcatrazz, Mr. Jimmy Waldo, is with us today. Jimmy, welcome.
Hey, great to be here, Pete. I appreciate the time. It's great.
I appreciate you coming and joining us. And I will start this off by saying I've been a fan of you and the band for a long time, and even your career before Alcatraz. Obviously, you had some
Wow.
going on before then. So a lot of great music over the years, and you guys are actually getting set to promote a brand new album. It's the reason why Jimmy is here. Take No Prisoners is set to come out fairly soon, and that follows your album number 5, right? The V album number 5, by about a
Yes.
year and a half. So pretty quick
Yeah.
follow up there, and
Yeah.
pretty much the same lineup for the most part, right? So you got you and Gary Shea, Gary on bass, of course. Doogie
Right.
White's back on vocals, Joe Stump again on guitars, and you have a new drummer, Larry Patterson, right?
Yes. Yeah. Mark couldn't tour anymore. He has family issues at home and just couldn't tour. Mark's one of my best friends. I love the guy, and I laugh because Mark and I have so much fun together. But yeah, unfortunately, he couldn't continue to tour. So Larry's been a great addition. Larry's worked out really good.
Cool, cool. Well, I had a chance to listen to the new album because the record label did provide me a pre-release listen, which is really good. It's very much a metal album like we know from Alcatraz. I think stylistically fairly similar to what you guys were doing on the last album. There's lots of blazing guitars and catchy hooks and things like that. So I guess my first question for you is, how quickly after the release of the 5th album did you guys kind of get back into writing mode to put this all together? Because it's come out pretty quickly after the last one.
Pretty quick. I mean, we had to do some touring, so we didn't. The touring interferes with making the records, because if we're making a record, we're working, but the tour takes precedent. We always we got to go on the road. We got these dates, so but it was pretty quick, and we had some ideas. I'd been writing, and I had a couple ideas. Joe's always got ideas. And Doogie had ideas, and he's very quick. I mean, you send Doogie an idea, and he either likes it or he doesn't. And if he doesn't like it, he'll say, well, and he's very cool about it. But he'll say, well, let me listen to it. Let me check it out. Maybe, see how. But sometimes you send him something, and it's like right away. So after V, we did some touring, but we were writing anyway, and just kind of got right into it, really. We're always in that mode. It's not like we stop and we take a vacation to the Bahamas, after the album. So we just kind of, it's an ongoing thing. Like, we're writing, this record technically is not out yet, and we're writing now.
Yeah, okay.
But we got touring coming up, so that will cut into our album making stuff. But I carry a recording rig on the road, so we get work done on the road. Some of these songs, Battle Lines was written on the road. So a lot of this stuff will happen on the road, the initial idea and demo. Because Joe's got a rig that he brings with him. It's a little mini Marshall, and it sounds really good, and he's got a couple of pedals, and so we just set up in a hotel room somewhere, basically,
Yeah.
and record. So we can kind of do it anywhere, really.
That's old school, right? That's the way things used to work.
Yeah, exactly. It really is old school, and it's not our recordings are not a big production. It's not a big. It's pretty straight ahead. I mean, I went to Italy this time to record the drums at Larry's house. He's a UK guy, but he lives in Italy, southern Italy. So he's got a drum room, not a big drum room, but we went there, and we were Zooming, and I said, let me look around the room, and it was too loud. The room was too noisy. And so he hung up T-shirts. He has a million T-shirts. So the whole back wall was covered in T-shirts. And that's what we used to dampen the room down. So yeah, pretty old school, and I took my gear. I don't have a lot of super high end stuff. And we spent 10 days and cut the drum tracks. So wasn't any big deal.
It's economical. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys get messed up at all? I know that we're kind of like at the tail end of the pandemic, but did you guys get your gigs get messed up at all as far as scheduling because of all that's gone on the last couple of years?
Yeah, the pandemic really screwed us up touring wise. We continued to make the record because I'm at home in my studio here, and it's like I just keep working. I don't know what's going on outside. I'm just working. And everybody pretty much did the same thing. And then as things wound down, we started getting together to cut. I went to Boston to cut guitars with Joe and all that. I mean, I live in Chicago, so it was it's pretty easy to get around, and all I need is an airport, and I can go anywhere. So,
Yeah.
and the touring we do is all out of the country at this point. We will be touring the States, but up to this point. So, yeah, the pandemic screwed it up, but because we got this European tour was canceled, which is a big one, and that really bummed us out, but it was what it was. And then the next year, it came around again, and it got canceled again. It was really a drag, but again, we just kept working, making a record. I mean, you can't. What are you going to do? It's a worldwide thing. It's not like you're mad at the part of the United States. I mean, it's like the whole world was sick. So
Yeah, for
it
sure.
is what it is,
Yep. So let's back up a little bit. So once you guys parted ways with Graham Bonnet and decided to continue on as Alcatraz,
Right.
How important was that for you to make sure that this band that you co-founded continued on? And B, how did you come across to decide upon Doogie as the vocalist? I mean, Doogie's a known quantity, right? So that kind of, to me, it was a no-brainer, but he
Yeah.
had a very distinctly different voice from Graham. So maybe you can kind of talk about how that all happened.
Yeah. Well, I definitely wanted to keep it alive. And I wanted to get back closer to the No Parole from Rock and Roll direction, the first album direction with Yngwie. I love that record. And I love the next record with Steve Vai.
Right?
I love Steve, and we're friends and we talk. And I saw him not too long ago in Chicago. But I still kept thinking, the real direction for this band, what the kind of music I love is that first album. I loved it. And so it was important to me to just keep going. And as you know, you've been in this a long time. People change members. I mean, people come and go, and you don't stop being a musician because somebody leaves or quits or dies or whatever. You keep going, and that was my thinking was, okay, well, new chapter, And Doogie, we had played in Edinburgh, and Doogie came to the show because he and Graham were friends. I'd never met him. And he came to the show, and we talked, and I just immediately loved the guy. He and his wife were the coolest people, nice people. And we hung out quite a bit that night and just talked. And it was just really cool having him there. And then I didn't see him again. Then we played in Edinburgh again, like the next tour, maybe a year later. And he was there again. And we picked up where we left off and talked. And I just thought, wow, what a great guy. I mean, I've always loved his voice. The Rainbow record he did is one of my favorite records. There's songs on there that, wow, I love Doogie's voice and his writing. His writing a lot, his lyrics and melodies. So we did that, and I thought, wow, he's a really cool guy. So then I saw him in LA with the Shanker Fest with Graham and
Gary
and the rest. Yeah, Gary and Robin. And I did some recording on that record for them. Robin lives in LA, so I recorded a couple of things for that record with Robin. And, we were talking, and he loves Doogie. We were just talking about Doogie, and I'm thinking, and so we had gone to the show, and there was nobody. Graham hadn't talked about leaving the band or anything at that point. Everything was normal. And my wife, who liked Graham had lived with me for a while. So my wife liked Graham as a person. And she was just standing there, we were watching Doogie and with Shanker. And my wife turned to me and she goes, well, there's your singer. And I said, well, who said anything about needing a singer? She goes, well, I just mean that, there's your singer. And we didn't talk about it anymore, and then things happened. But Doogie was an obvious choice to me because stylistically, he's just right in there. And personally, I really like the guy. He's just a real normal, nice guy. There's no bullshit. There's no big ego or anything like that. So, yeah, it was a easy transition, very easy.
And that's important. I mean, because you guys were in kind of a tough spot, right? I mean, you hear again, and this comes as no surprise to you, I'm sure, because you hear it with lots of bands. It's the people who will be like, no Graham Bonnet, no Alcatraz. But when you bring in a guy named Doogie White, who has worked with Hendrix Blackmore, who has sung alongside Graham Bonnet for Michael Schenker, who's played with Yngwie, right? And then
that's right.
And by the way, if you've never heard, he did an album with a band called Demon's Eye a number of years ago, and Demon's Eye were like a Deep Purple tribute band, and then they did an album together of all. That's great, really good. A very underrated album from Doogie. But anyway.
Yeah, I know the album. I haven't listened to it, but I've heard people talk about it on the road. People come up and ask me, "Oh, have you ever heard that?" And stuff. So, yeah, he's a great singer. But Doogie's like a real pro, real hard worker, old school, like got to get the job done. Let's get the job done. And rehearsals, because we rehearse all over the world because we have to. And, we'll just go to some rehearsal place in Germany for a week. Doogie shows up and it's like, let's get it on. Let's do it. There's no complaining about the hotel or anything. He's a real pro. And I love that. This band now is it's easy. It's nice people. We all get along really good. There's no drama. There's no BS. It's just get the job done. And we all love what we're doing and we like playing together.
Well,
so
that's the important thing. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of laughing with each other on stage kind of thing. And I can't tell you it's really nice when that happens.
Sure.
So
you can tell by the music. I mean, to me, and to kind of point out some songs on the new album. So songs like Battle Lines and Little Viper and Gates of Destiny. I mean, the band just sounds together. To me, the new album has a nice mix of that kind of classic hard rock and neoclassical metal that you guys are kind of known for.
Yeah,
which was the foundation of the original band, right? And then you have some stuff that are more anthemic, like "Don't Get Mad, Get Even," which is terrific. You got this atmospheric, emotional song called "Strangers," which I really like a lot. This nice slow build.
Yeah.
Do you feel? I don't know. Again, 1-2 quick listens for me of the new album, and I'm going to be getting it. I'll obviously hear it a lot more. Do you feel like maybe you guys added a little bit more variety on this album compared to the V album, which was really, really strong? I absolutely loved it. So to me, it feels like you going in a couple different directions on this album, which is all good. And it all makes for, I think, a more cohesive.
Yeah, we did try some stuff. And like Strangers, that wasn't an experiment, but we kept thinking of different songs that inspired us. Heaven and Hell, and I love Ronnie Dio to death. So, stuff that he had done and different bands over the years. And I love Black Sabbath. So we thought, and Giles, our manager, kept saying, how come you guys don't do something where there's 2 different tempos in the song? Just that simple. And I went, well, I don't know. It never happened. So we started thinking about that. So Joe had written these 2 pieces of music, and we thought, wow, this way back in the early stages, we thought, man, this could go into this. So I started working on it at home in my studio, just putting things together and trying stuff. And it was a natural. It was like, holy cow, this just works like it was written this way. So, sorry, I'm just seeing if my wife was emailing me. Anyway, it was just a real natural thing. It just like worked so well. And again, it was easy because it all just kind of happened. Don't Get Mad, Get Even was funny. Doogie wrote that, and I loved it. I thought it was really cool. And then our manager, somebody came up with the idea. Well, we're touring with Girls School all the time, and Giles, our manager, manages Girls School, and we're good friends with them. So said, wow, wouldn't it be cool to have them sing the chorus? So we were on the road in Europe, and I carry my recording stuff with me. So I said, come down my room this afternoon, and we'll do the vocals. And they went, okay. And knock on the door, and the four of them walk in. I handed them a Shure SM58, and they just held it. And I played the track. We just played it on a speaker in the room. There were no headphones or isolation or anything. And they could hear it. Can you turn it up a little bit? I turned it up a little bit. Okay, that's good. And they just sang it. In 20 minutes, they were done and gone. And so that was a lot of fun. And that's as old school as it gets.
I was going to say, right?
Hotel rooms. And we've cut a few guitars like that. We've done lots of stuff in hotel rooms. We wrote battle lines. We had some days off, and we were over in Preston, England, on the West Coast, and we rented an Airbnb because the actual tour was going to start over there in that part of the country. So we were in the living room one afternoon, and Giles says, well, I got this idea. So he starts singing this melody, and there were different lyrics and more or less a different melody, but he starts saying, oh, that's really cool. So we started messing around with it, and Joe goes, I got it. I got something. So he starts playing a thing. So Giles and I and Joe put that together in a living room in this Airbnb at a coffee table. And Alcatraz was a similar kind of thing. And then when we went to do vocals in Scotland with Doogie months later, Doogie said, I hear kind of different. I think we could do a better melody or lyric. I'm not crazy about the lyric or the. So Giles and I went back to the hotel in Edinburgh, and Giles goes, okay, I got an idea. So I put the track on, playing out of my laptop, and Giles wrote lyrics and a melody in about 45 minutes. And I took my iPhone and held it up with the track playing and put it in record and recorded Giles singing to the track and took that to the studio the next day. The engineer put it in the computer, played it for Doogie, and he learned it and sang it. So just that's the kind of stuff that happens because we all get along really good, and there's no egos. That's the greatest thing for me is there's no egos at all. It's just everybody's just like, hey, that sounds good. Let's do it. Or I don't.
And it's almost like too. There's no like set time for writing and arranging. You guys are just doing it all the time, right? Whenever.
No, and we have to because Doogie lives in Scotland and Larry lives in Italy and I'm in Chicago and Joe's in Boston. So we have to take advantage of when we are together. Shoot much video as we can, which is just 99% of it's iPhone. All our videos are done on an iPhone. At a gig. Sometimes like this battle lines we did in Edinburgh, I think, at a club. We got the club for the next day. We did the same thing in London. They gave us the club the next day and we shot videos in the club the next day. So with iPhones, and one of the guys that works with us has a really good camera, but video camera, but yeah, it's all done on the fly and just like not much planning really. We know we got to get it done, so there's no real planning about okay, Tuesday at 10 o'clock, it's not like that. Like the old days when the band New England made records, it was a big, huge production. Sure. You're leaving for LA for the studio on the 16th, and you got to be done with basics by the, blah, 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 blah. So big money going down. So whole different world out there right now.
For sure. It's funny. When I first took a look at the track listing of the new album, I'm like, wow. So it took you guys 40 years to actually do a song called Alcatraz. Yeah.
And it's funny because Giles wrote that, our manager, and he's a lot younger than the rest of us. And Giles says he kind of grew up on that first album and thinking about the island of Alcatraz and Island in the Sun. He loved that song and the lyric that Graham wrote and all that great. He just thought he wanted to do another one. And he asked me, he said, is that okay with you if and I'm like, well, I don't own it. What are you talking about? So he did, he wrote, I thought was really cool and a neat concept, so yeah, so it just kind of happened.
Cool. And you mentioned Ronnie James Dio before, and in one of my notes here, the song Holy Roller reminds me of Dio era Rainbow, maybe a little classic Deep Purple, a little bit of Heaven and Hell era Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And I love your organ on that song, and then Doogie's vocals come in, and then Joe comes in with the shredding solo. And that's kind of where I wanted to take this. So what's it like working with a Joe Stump? I mean, you worked with Yngwie, obviously, when Yngwie was really, really young, and obviously, big personality there. Is working with Joe Stump, how different is that, or how similar is that?
It's well, gosh, it's pretty similar, really. Yngwie and I got along really good. I know that a lot of stories floated around for years and years about all the problems we had with Yngwie. But Yngwie and I got along really good. I mean, he was funny. And we would argue, certainly at a rehearsal, some of the first rehearsals, Yngwie just turned his Marshalls on in a rehearsal and just playing on 10, just shredding. And we'd say, hey, Yngwie, you got to stop because we got to work out an arrangement for a song. And he'd go, oh yeah, man. Yeah. And then he would just start playing again. So things like that. There was some tension. But I mean, then we just laugh about it. I mean, so we got along with Yngwie good. So Yngwie, ironically, a real professional and a great musician. Joe is the same thing. Joe is an excellent musician, a Berkeley professor. That helps. But excellent musician. Joe's got great feel and comes up with great ideas. And Yngwie did too. Yngwie was full of ideas. Yngwie could just sit down with any guitar, anywhere, anytime, and play and write something. I mean, really what we consider writing. And he just come up with these cool riffs and connect them together. He's a good arranger. And Joe is exactly the same way. Joe can sit down anywhere with a guitar and come up with something. So they're very similar in that way. They have that same feel for the instrument and the writing and arranging and stuff. So they're very similar. Personality-wise, they're different. Yeah. Yngwie's, he's just a different guy than Joe, but I think they would get along if they spent any time together because they have that thing in common. And I know Yngwie respects Joe's playing and Joe loves Yngwie's playing. So if they ever did get together for any amount of time, he's met him a few times, but that would be good. But yeah, playing with Joe is not really like playing with Yngwie though. It's a different vibe, but what's coming out of the speakers is still got that. What I like about Joe, and this is what I loved about Yngwie, it's what I call that reckless abandon. Sure. Yeah. This is not prog metal. This is not jazz. This is not fusion. This is rock and roll. And Yngwie went for it. Yngwie never picked up that guitar that he wasn't trying to tear the strings off of it. I mean, very aggressive player, incredible technique, and he played very light. I mean, if you ever watched his fingers on a fretboard, it looks like he's hardly touching the strings. But his pick attack, just incredible. And it comes off very aggressive. His chord work, his whole thing. Joe is the same way. Joe's got this aggressive thing, and it's not that he doesn't care about if it gets a little out of control, but he has fun, and the aggression really comes across live. That's what you need live. I don't think people are there to get a music lesson. I think they're there to have fun and to get moved by something. And to me, that's why I love playing with guitar players like that. Everybody says, oh, that must be intimidating playing. For me, it's fun. It's great. And I learn from each one of them. I get things from each one. I'm not a schooled musician. So for me, like with Joe, the scales that he uses are different. And so I have to learn them. So I go study scales. I go work on scales and get into his head about where's he coming up with this from? Where's this Byzantine thing coming from? So it's a lot of fun for me. So both those guys, Yngwie was a challenge, and we wrote songs together, and it was a lot of fun. I would play something and Yngwie would go, yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. And then he would just go off and play this put it together. It was like, oh my God, that's great, Ingve. And Joe's the same way. Joe be playing something. It's like, that is cool. That feels great, and then we'll just put it together. So ironically, there's a lot of similarities in those two guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, you listen to the stuff with Joe, and it gives you that feel of the classic Alcatraz because they both kind of do that neoclassical.
Right. Right.
I want to take you back in time because I know you got to go in a minute, but take you back 40 years ago. I went to see you guys open up for Ted Nugent on the No Parole from Rock and Roll tour at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, New York. And you guys were set to go on. The curtain was closed. And all of a sudden you could hear from behind the stage, and everybody started chanting, Ingve, Ingve, Ingve.
Yeah.
And he poked his head from behind the curtain, went like this. Everybody went bananas, closed the curtain, and then you guys came out. It was so cool. And he just seemed to be having the time of his life because Ingve is like the same age as me. So it's like, as a young kid to be in a band with you veterans, who have done so much cool things. I'm sure for him that was like, awesome. It's completely awesome.
He had so much fun on stage. He was just smiling all the time.
Yeah.
He loved playing. He loves playing. And the first time we played with the guy, you could feel it. We technically auditioned him in LA at this rehearsal place. And he was wild and woolly. I mean, he was excited. So we were playing some Rainbow songs just to play because we hadn't written hardly anything at that point. And he was just ripping them apart. It was great. But he had that reckless abandon thing where he wasn't worried about the neatness of the playing or the sound or the noise, it was all energy and fun. Yeah. And he was on stage in that little rehearsal place, just laughing and having fun. He'd look at us and it was just great. And that's the way he was live. Yeah. I see the Japanese video that we did, and which has been re-edited and put out and stuff. And I watched some of that, and he's just laughing. He's like this the whole time. He's smiling and laughing and having fun and just putting on a show, But that's him. That's what he does. I say it's not a show. He's not thinking when he's playing. He's not thinking about like, well, I'm going to move over to the right now and spin and put the guitar. He's just, it's on. It's on. And Joe is a lot the same way. Joe's got his moves, but he doesn't think about it. He just does what he does, And I love that about those kind of guitar players. Steve Vai was like that. A lot of people have thought over the years, they think Steve is this very cerebral guy, which he is. I mean, he's a very brilliant musician. But when he's playing with Alcatraz, it was on. It was the same thing. He wasn't worried about the details. He was playing the crap out of the song and taking chances, which I loved.
Yeah, and these guys you all mentioned, not only great musicians, but they're great performers too. And I think,
yes,
like Ingve specifically, grew up idolizing like Hendrix and Blackmore and whatnot. Those guys were performers too, just as much as they were virtuoso musicians. So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, Hendrix it mesmerized people. People, you see it. Those crowds are like people were just like, it was incredible.
Cool. Well, I know Jimmy's got to get going because I know he's got other interviews, but so we got Take No Prisoners. What's the release date for that album, Jimmy?
I'm sorry?
When's the release date of the new album?
The 18th of May, I think, is the last I heard.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are we going to see you guys here in the U.S.?
I think so. There's plans to do it in October, November. Oh, cool. We're hoping if everything goes okay, then we'll be on the road, and there's a lot of dates. So we'd be doing like a west half of the country and then the east half of the country, different times. But yeah, where are you located?
New York.
New York. Whereabouts in New York? The city?
I'm in the Hudson Valley, so I'm about.
Oh yeah, my friend Eddie Kramer lived up there.
Yep.
So that was amazing country. I lived in Boston for 12 years, so we used to play all through upstate New York and everything. And I love that.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a great place.
Eddie, speaking of Poughkeepsie, Eddie Kramer was at that show to produce us.
Ah, okay.
He was an old friend of mine, and I called him, and he lived close by. So he came up to see us and was going to produce us. We had a tour bus. So Eddie came out to the tour bus after the show to talk. And we sat in the little lounge on the tour bus. Yngwie was flipping out because Eddie had worked with Hendrix. And Yngwie just worshipped Hendrix. So that it was fun. I was sitting in the booth, and Eddie's sitting here, and Yngwie's there. And Yngwie was just like, he was in awe of Eddie, and it was so much fun. And Eddie really liked him. They got along great. And Yngwie, because Yngwie asks the right questions, you know, of a producer. He's talking. He just had the right things to say, and Eddie really appreciates that, you know. So it was fun. That was a neat thing. When you mentioned Poughkeepsie, that's the first thing I thought of. But yeah, I remember that gig very well.
Great show. It was a great tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love Ted, but I went there to see you guys because that.
Well, thank you.
When your debut album came out, that like rocked the world of many, many people. And me being such a huge like Purple Rainbow fan, it just to me it was just like this is great.
And me too. Me too. I love John Lord was one of my favorite keyboard players.
Oh yeah.
I was so sad when he passed. I mean, a lot of guys that I liked. He was definitely top of my list. I never met him, you know, but yeah, what a shame.
One of the greats, yeah. We miss him. We miss him, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So there you have it, everybody. Take No Prisoners coming up in just a couple of weeks. New album from Alcatraz. Make sure you check it out. I've heard it. It's really good. If you like the last one, V, you're going to love this one. So, and hopefully we get to see you guys out on tour. And thanks to the great Jimmy Waldo for coming and spending some time with us today. And visit us on the www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Have a great weekend, everybody. And go check out the new Alcatraz. For Jimmy Waldo, I'm Pete Pardo. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.